Excuse me, Flo? Flo with the TV show. What is your NHL ceiling?
If you're ever wondering what me asking Florian Xhekaj for an interview would look like, that would be it. So Florian Xhekaj, now we're actually going to try to have somewhat of a serious conversation about this player, Montreal prospect Florian Xhekaj, who currently is enjoying himself a much improved season production-wise with the Brantford Bulldogs. Florian Xhekaj's first full OHL season last year saw him play all 68 games with the Hamilton Bulldogs, and his point totals were 13 goals, 12 assists for 25 points in those 68 games. Fast forward to this year, and Xhekaj's point totals have almost doubled in 19 less games played. So far this season, Xhekaj has 25 goals, 19 assists, good for 44 points in 49 games so far. The 101st overall draft choice in the 4th round for the Montreal Canadiens last year in 2023 has been scoring at a clip which has been catching some eyeballs, especially mine, because it seems like every other day on Twitter, I'm seeing him score a goal, and there's a notification popping up that he did so. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is pretty amazing, his point production total. So we got to talk about him a little bit here. And, what is Florian Xhekaj's NHL ceiling going to be? We don't necessarily know. My friend Matt, aka Hockey Junkie, has him as a fringe NHLer. And up until this season, I mean, we really didn't know exactly what he was going to become, but it does seem like since being drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, it seems to have really lit a fire under Florian Xhekaj in the sense that he now has some motivation, some really strong motivation to see himself long-term as an NHL player potentially here in a bottom six role, most likely is what I would see him as. But I don't even necessarily want to limit him to a fourth line role. I kind of had him envisioned a few weeks ago, or maybe within the last couple months or so, as being like a Mike Pizzetta replacement on the fourth line. But I think he's going to be a lot more than that. I don't know to what clip he'll be able to produce in the NHL, but I will say that I don't want to necessarily limit him to a fourth line player in the NHL. If he can keep producing at this clip going into his overage season next year in the OHL, should he remain there and not sign an entry-level deal with the Montreal Canadiens, I think it would do him some good and really get himself a chance to become. He's almost a point per game player right now in his current OHL season. So there's no reason to believe that he can't try to strive for that. But also in general, just try to round out his game. And, he's a guy who can score from a lot of different areas in the ice, right? He's able to crash and bang, score goals right in front of them, right in front, and not only in front, but off the rush. You see him scoring a lot of goals in a lot of different ways. And I think that's one of the most encouraging signs too. The guy is 6'4", 190 pounds. He's definitely a Xhekaj. So there's no question there about his size, his stature, but it's now more about, can he help translate that to the next level, ideally with the Laval Rocket in the next 2 seasons, maybe as soon as next season, although I think that would be a bit quick for him, being that he's only had a year and a half so far of development in the OHL with the Brantford and Hamilton Bulldogs. So I think another year at the OHL level would do Florian some good, frankly. And I think that the ceiling for him would be, for me, a third line player, a bottom six role for Florian Xhekaj with the Montreal Canadiens. Call me crazy, but I mean, one day maybe we could see a third line, of Owen Beck, Florian Xhekaj, and Philip Michar or something like that. You know what I mean? I think that would be something that would be much more down the road, because all those guys haven't played a single game with the Montreal Canadiens except for Owen Beck, who's played one. But I do think that, this really is where I'm starting to see if he can keep these point production numbers up in the OHL, how well will it translate to the NHL? And can he become, at best, potentially a bottom six player on in a third line role for Florian Xhekaj? Maybe he becomes a staple on the fourth line and he's able to help the fourth line produce a lot more in the future for the Canadiens. But I do think that there is some potential here, and I think he's only showing more of it by continuing to find himself on the score sheet almost every single night lately in the OHL with the Brantford Bulldogs. We know he's a Xhekaj also. He can fight. He's already been suspended in the OHL. He can fight, he can score, he can hit. He's got a lot of elements to his game that we certainly like coming from the Montreal Canadiens side of things, and he could really round out the bottom six really nicely for the Habs. And it's amazing to think that we don't know how many of the Habs prospects are actually going to be future Montreal Canadiens, but it does seem like Florian is really trying to push the envelope here. And I had a chance to see him play at the Prospects Challenge in Buffalo, and he actually looked pretty good. He was actually pretty quick on his skates. He didn't seem nervous. He wasn't phased by the moment, where you could tell somebody like Logan Mailloux was phased by the moment at that time. And now Logan's having himself a great season with the Laval Rockets, so forget that. Those nerves are gone. But it does seem like Florian Xhekaj, based on what I've seen of him play, just, in person twice this season, once in the Prospects Challenge and once against the Niagara Ice Dogs, which isn't a big feat to score against them. But I did go to the game where Florian scored the first shot on the first shot on goal against the Niagara Ice Dogs, so that was pretty fun. He gets to the front of the net. He's not afraid to go to the front of the net. He's also able to score on rush plays. I don't know much about his defensive game, so I wouldn't mind some of you guys chiming in if you want to, if you've seen Florian play in person more than I have, or even on TV. But I would like to know how he is without the puck. That's kind of something I would like to know more of. But I know that he can be physical, he can fight, he can score. And I just think that the ceiling, it's kind of up to him at this point. But if he is able to keep producing at this clip, he's going to be a fun prospect to keep an eye on. And it'd be cool to see the Bash brothers actually both be on the Montreal Canadiens together at some point. As it stands with the Brantford Bulldogs right now, Florian is 5th in scoring right now with those 44 points at the time of the recording of this video, and he's also 3rd in goals scored with 25. I tried to look at his line mates, Patrick Thomas and Ben Buchholz, to see if, maybe are they a big part of the reason that Xhekaj is having so much success so far this season with Brantford? And I think that's definitely part of it. He's playing with two players that do find themselves in the top tier scoring with the Brantford Bulldogs right now, with Patrick Thomas sitting 3rd overall in scoring with the Bulldogs. But I do think that Florian's really determined right now. He's really motivated. You can really tell that the draft selection, having the Canadiens select him in the NHL draft, whereas his brother Arbor, as we know, was not drafted in the NHL, right? He had to fight and claw his way to get an opportunity to get to training camp with the Canadiens, and then eventually earn himself a roster spot and a contract. So I do think that it would be appropriate for about this time next year, just after the OHL season, and maybe in March or April, when Florian Xhekaj will sign his entry-level deal with the Canadiens. But it really depends on how he performs. If he just keeps proving that he's ready, maybe as soon as next season, maybe we do see him sign his entry-level deal before next season with the Canadiens and find himself a spot on the Laval Rocket. But I think just the fact that he's turning 20 this year, it does make him eligible to play with the Laval Rocket, but I still think it might be too soon. It'd be nice to see him get a 3rd full season of development at the OHL level and maybe potentially become more of a dominant force in the OHL, and then really be seasoned into his pro season the year after. That's all I got, you guys. Some Florian Xhekaj talk. It's fun just to talk about individual Canadiens prospects, in videos here. I usually talk about multiple because I just love to talk about so many things at once, but it's good to zero in on Florian and his progression and just talk about, his progress this season, because it's definitely been noticeable by a lot of folks. So keep your eye on X or Twitter, because a Florian Xhekaj goal highlight or assist highlight might be, coming there as soon as tomorrow, or as soon as this video comes out, whatever, you know what I mean? Just keep on top of it, because he is a prospect to keep an eye out for. And I think he does actually have bottom 6 potential. There's no question in my mind. The way he's producing right now, he's got a lot to prove. And right now he's proving it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Appreciate the support, guys. Cheers.